The Spring 2020 virtual training is brought to you by a collaboration between the ARC of Illinois, Equip for Equality, and the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. And the images on the screen are the logos for the three entities. On the upper left-hand part of the screen is the logo for the ARC of Illinois. In the middle of the screen is the logo for Equip for Equality, and it includes the words advancing the human and civil rights of people with disabilities in Illinois. And in the lower right-hand corner of the screen is the logo for the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. The virtual training schedule. Yesterday, we started off with flexing our advocacy muscles. Our topics were Welcome to Spring 2020 Virtual Training and Self-Advocacy 101 presented by the Alliance. Today's training on Tuesday, June 16th is How Voting Fits into Your Life and Voter Rights and Responsibilities, also presented by the Alliance. Tomorrow's training, Wednesday, June 17th, Ways to Learn About Candidates and Issues and Civic Engagement. That will be brought to us by the ARC of Illinois. On Thursday, June 18th, let's get ready to learn from Equip for Equality as they present How do you register and vote, and how to get around voting problems. And on Friday, we're going to bring it all home on June 19th, and the ARC of Illinois will wrap us up with How a Bill Becomes a Law and Spring 2020 Virtual Training Wrap-Up. Many of the presentations that are being brought to you this week are from the SABE, S-A-B-E, which stands for Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered Go Voter Toolkit. The toolkit is a guide that was created by leaders in the self-advocacy movement to help teach people voter education trainings, how to give these trainings in their communities. And the Go Voter Toolkit includes facilitator and trainer manual and activities. It's made up of 9 modules, several of which we're going to experience over the course of this week. It includes PowerPoint slides, and it's free of charge. And not only free of charge, but it's fabulous. So 2 great F words, free and fabulous. You can check it out online at sabeusa.org, or you can just type in SABE Go Voter Toolkit into a search engine. And the image on the screen is the SABE Go Voter Projects logo. So a little bit about what we learned yesterday. If you were on yesterday's webinar, thank you, and thank you for joining us again today. And if you weren't, no worries. It's being recorded and people will be able to access those recordings. But what we did yesterday, we really looked at self-advocacy, and we flexed those self-advocacy muscles with Derek Morris and Tracy Wyant. It was all about speaking up and speaking out for yourself and for other people who can't or don't know how to speak up for themselves. We really went over all the pieces of a self-advocacy puzzle. And those interlocking pieces include what, how, who, when, and where, and why. And the last thing we talked about is advocacy is everywhere. It's at home, it's at school, it's at work, it's in the community. You can speak up and speak out anywhere and everywhere and anytime you want. And with that, we're going to turn it over, and I'd like you to meet the first presenter. Take it away, Jay-Jin.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here and look forward to sharing some great information with you today. As Christine said, my name is Jay-Jin Pak. I am the project specialist for the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance, and I go by he, him pronouns.
Hi, everyone. This is Tara Ahern. I am the project director for the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. Jay-Jin and I are also the Illinois Imagines Chicago co-chairs. And lastly, I'm the Paul G. Hearn 2020 Leadership Award recipient. I'm really excited to be here today and, excited to learn some stuff with you. Okay, next slide. So yes, for those of you who were on yesterday, we did a fun little game called Would You Rather. So we're going to do some more today just to kind of get our muscles warmed up, our advocacy muscles. And I want to hear from you guys. So I think the chats the polls are available today, correct?
This is Christine, and I believe they are. So Nafia, when Tara tells you to do those polls, go ahead and start those polls.
Okay, here's our first poll. Would you rather, what do you like more? Are you a St. Louis Cardinals fan or a Chicago Cubs fan? So on the left, we have an image with the St. Louis Cardinals logo. It's a circle with a cardinal bird on it, standing on a baseball bat, and has a baseball hat on it. And it looks like in the circle, there's a shape of a baseball. On the right, we have a red, white, and blue logo, a blue circle with a big C, UBS for Cubs. So what do we like better? I'm going to take the poll too. Oh, no, I'm not allowed to vote. Oh, sad. All right, and whenever you guys are ready to see the results, let's see those results. Oh, 94% said Chicago Cubs. Well, I would call that a landslide for sure. Okay. Now let's see, next slide. Okay, would you rather, are you a fan of salty snacks or sweet snacks? So on the left, we have an image of some pretzels, chips. We've got some goldfish and some almonds. And on the right, we have lots of delicious candy. We've got Reese's, M&M's, Snickers, Twix, Crunch, and Almond Joy. Oh, and Milky Ways too. This is a hard one. Salty or sweet?
Hey, Christine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I need you to go and just select the next poll question.
Oh. Okay. Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
Just did it. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so now everyone can vote salty or sweet. This poll is making me hungry. I know what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to get me some snacks. Okay, and the results are in. We've got sweet snacks. 60% said sweet snacks versus 40% with salty. Great job, everyone. Okay, what is our next poll? Okay, so we've got country music or rock and roll music. On the left, we have an image of a cowboy boot and a guitar. And on the right, we have lots of rock and roll music equipment. So we've got a drum set, an electric guitar, a keyboard, a microphone, and some drumsticks. So what do you like more, country or rock and roll? Okay, the results are in. 69% said rock and roll music versus 31% for country. Next up, we have, oh, it's time for dessert. Our two options are ice cream or cake and pie. So on the left, we have an image of some ice cream cones with various colors of ice cream scooped onto them. And on the right, we have a delicious, lovely array of cakes and pies. We've got, looks like we've got a lot in there. So what would you rather have, ice cream or cake and pie? Whoa, oh, this is exciting. Oh, wow, we've got 50-50 split right down the middle. And you know what, when we talk about this, when I do advocacy presentations, there's always someone who says, I want ice cream on my pie. And sometimes that's an option too. If someone presents you with two options, sometimes you can say, well, I want both, or I want neither, or, you know, that's the beauty of self-advocacy. You get to speak up for what you want. What's our next poll? Oh, okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Jay Jin, and he's going to talk to you about how voting fits into your life. Jay Jin?
Jin, this is Christine. We're not able to hear you. I hope that you're still there. Oh, yes. All right.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, there we go.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I didn't hit my button the right way. So thanks, Tara. As Tara mentioned, you know, this little, the polls is a fun way of getting the idea of making choices. And as we talk about voting is a way of making choices, and we'll explore that a little bit more today and learn more about the process throughout the rest of the sessions this week. So let's talk, first of all, get an understanding of what voting is. So next slide. So start off, I have a first quick question for you all. As a poll, the question that we want to ask is, out of everyone who's here, how many of you are registered to vote? So Christine, if we have a vote, do you have a poll for that?
We do, and Nafia, if you could put that poll up, we'd like to find out how many of you who are joining us today. Oh, we're back on the ice cream and cakes and pies. I'm still thinking about that too.
Yeah, just make sure that there we go. Okay.
All right.
So the question is, are you registered to vote? If you're registered to vote, please click yes. If you're unsure or don't know, you can click no, that's okay. Okay, and the results, oh, fantastic, and overwhelming. It was like 100% of everybody who's on here is registered to vote. That's fantastic. So we can move on to the next one. And our next poll or question is, since all of us are registered to vote, have you voted in an election? If you voted in an election, please click yes. If you haven't yet, that's okay. Push. And let's find the results. Great. Looks like we have about 90% of folks who are here have voted, and 10 people haven't yet, and that's fine. So we can learn more about voting and exercise that muscle soon. Next. So we're going to start by showing a little video of asking the question and what's important to us. So please.
What's important to you?
Accessibility.
Accessibility. Civil rights. Human rights.
Equal rights.
Healthcare.
Independence.
To make my own choices.
Accessible and affordable housing.
Dignity.
Respect. Inclusion. Jobs.
Equal opportunity.
Public transportation.
Relationships. Register to vote. Register to vote.
Register to vote.
Make your voice count.
Go vote.
Great. Next slide.
What?
So before we jump in, the reason we wanted to show that video is because, you know, we all have things that we care about. Some of the things that the people in the video had mentioned: healthcare, accessibility, inclusion, human rights, along with, you know, transportation access and housing, all of those things. And at the end, they all said register to vote. And the reason it's all the things or those issues and concerns and topics that we care about can be influenced or impacted by each of us exercising our right to vote and making choices. So that's why I think it was important for us to kind of hear from the diverse disabled community and members of our peers the importance and encouragement of voting. Let's talk about how laws have made a big difference in the lives of people with disabilities. So next slide. So I'm going to quickly just highlight some federal laws and a few state laws in Illinois that were impacted by voting. So the first one is the 1973 Rehabilitation Act. So in 1973, the Rehab Act says that it makes it illegal for federal agencies, public universities, and other public institutions receiving any federal funds to discriminate on the basis of disability. So what this law says is that any group or organization that's receiving any kind of federal funding, they can't tell someone with a disability, you can't come here, that we as people with disabilities have the right to access their services and resources, okay? Then who can forget the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, which became into law in 1990. So the ADA does not allow discrimination on the basis of disability in the areas of employment, building accessibility, transportation, and telecommunications. So this was huge and very important for us, is that for those of us with disabilities, if we want to seek a job and employment, we have a right to apply and to get hired on our skills and our talents, and we can't be turned down based on our disability. That we have the right to access all public facilities. You know, we can go to libraries, parks, community buildings, stores, and go shopping on our own if we want to. And those buildings have to be made accessible for us, so that we can go in and do our own independent shopping. Similarly with transportation, buses, planes, and trains have to be made accessible so that we can utilize them independently as well as accessing, you know, telephone services and other communication services, again, making it possible for us to access those services and resources as we need to. Okay, next. Another law is the Developmental Disabilities Act of 2000. This says that individuals with developmental disabilities and their families have access to community services, individualized supports, self-determination, independence, and inclusion in community life. Again, this made it possible for those of us with this developmental disabilities, made it clear that we have access to all of these services as this law was passed. Okay, so those were some of the federal laws. Let's talk, I'm going to highlight some local Illinois laws that got passed into law. So the first one is House Bill, or HB 2142. This became effective July 12th of 2019, so last year. And it provides that an adult with a disability under guardianship may request and receive up to 12 counseling or psychotherapy sessions, previously at 5, capped at 5 sessions, lasting no more than 60 minutes, which was previously capped at 45 minutes, without the consent of the guardian. So a lot there. So basically what this law made possible was that, any of us with a disability who has a guardianship, who has a guardian for whatever reason, that those with a disability, if we're going through some kind of mental health crisis and we want to seek a counselor or see a therapist, we individually can reach out and connect to a therapist or counselor and speak with them privately up to 12 times, and for each session being 1 full hour before our guardian becomes involved in that. And this is important. So again, it gives us the freedom as individuals to seek mental health therapy or counseling or advice if we want. Next. Next piece of legislation is HB 3299, which became effective January 1st of this year. This law says that people in developmental disability facilities shall have access to sex education, related resources, and treatment planning that supports his or her right to sexual health and healthy sexual practices, and to be free from sexual exploitation and abuse. This was really important for a lot of us in the disability community. A lot of us have done a lot of work and advocacy to make this, advocate for this law to happen. And it basically says that if you're an adult with getting services at a developmental disability facility, you have a right to access and be given access to comprehensive, accurate sex ed information to learn about proper and appropriate and healthy sexuality and sexual practices. And not be shamed or not be bothered by it, that access to that information is readily available for you, and get support to learn about sex and relationships and dating. So next, we also have SB or Senate Bill 2087, which became effective again January of this year, which requires the Department of Human Services, Division of Rehab Services, otherwise known as DOORS, to establish a 5-year customized employment plan program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So this makes it that, if you're someone with who has IDD, receiving services from DOORS will work with them to develop a 5-year plan to help them find a job and keep it. And that plan is a 5-year. Okay, next. Another law is HB 3483, which again became effective this year, January of this year, which requires the Department of Human Services to use the PUNS database, or the Prioritization for Urgency of Need for Services database, to foster a fair and orderly system for processing applications for services, keeping individuals and families who have applied for services informed of available services and wait times, and determining unmet needs, and etc. That's a lot there, and it can be confusing. But I think it boils down to this. This law tells DHS to come with a good system of communicating with those individuals who are on the PUNS list, so that those individuals are given timely and efficient messages as to what their status is and what services they're eligible for, and makes it and hopefully pushes them to streamline and make it more efficient better to access services and move through the system in a more smoother way and less confusing way is what this is about. So we've talked about some of the laws that, because of a lot of advocacy and the power of voting in different ways, have made bills into laws. However, even with some voting and advocacy, some things are still haven't quite been passed into law yet. So some of these include HB 3340, which is a bill that is proposing to require the phase out of sub-minimum wage by July of 2024. There's a lot of advocacy, so this is still in the works. Similarly, HB 3975 and SB 2315 is a bill that will ban the use of seclusion in schools. Again, it hasn't become a law yet, but it's still being in the process. And if it's an issue that you care about, you can find ways of advocating. Next. Another bill that's in the works is SB 1148 or HB 2148. This is a bill that will increase wages for frontline personnel in residential and day programs. So, you know, folks that are working in residential and day programs that are really good at their job, we want them to have a living wage, and that's what this law is going to be fighting for. Not law yet, again, so it's still in the works. Next. So the question I have for you, kind of thinking about, so we talked about some laws. Our next poll is a simple poll, thinking about what the laws we've talked about and laws in general. Has voting made a difference in your life? There's the poll. So I'm going to take a couple seconds to just think a yes or no if you think that voting has made an impact in your life. Okay, and let's see what the results are. Yes, overwhelmingly, we have 88% that show that yes, voting has made an influence in our lives. And you think about it, all the laws that we talked about, the national and federal laws, whether it's the ADA, the Rehab Act, or the law about sex ed, and the laws about improving DHS services, all of those laws resulted in advocacy and voting. And as a result, active voting, those laws became laws and were passed. So that directly impacts a lot of our lives. Okay, so yes. So next. So let's talk about, we've talked about some laws, let's talk about some specifics. When we're talking about voting, one group that we can vote for are offices and the people that run for those offices. And you think about voting offices, you can vote for the president. So, which is timely, and these webinars are timely because this year in 2020, in November, we're having a big national presidential election where our country vote for the president of the US. Additionally, on the federal level, we can also vote for senators and representatives on the House, Senate, and the House of Representatives from each state that all of us can vote for. In Illinois and other states, we vote on a state level for the governor. So Illinois, years ago, we voted and elected Governor Pritzker as our governor for Illinois. On the city and town, in your local towns and cities that we all live in, we have the opportunity to vote for our mayor in elections. And then also on the city level or town level is if the city has a city council, people can run and vote for city council positions or commission positions, as well as on different school boards or school commissions on your town or city, on those. Other things to vote for are things like bonds taxes, propositions, issues, and measures. These are words or labels of certain types of policies or protocols that may come up in elections. So it's just for your information. If you see that it's important that you investigate and you read and learn about what the bonds or taxes is, so that you can make some informed decisions. Let's just give you an idea of what different categories might be. Next. So we're going to start talking about a little bit of an activity to kind of practice voting muscle, or the idea of what voting is. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and as you know, you practiced with the polls and with the what would you rather exercise. In those options, you made choices, chose, you know, Cubs versus Cardinals, or ice cream versus cake, or choices. And choices that we make is a way of voting. When we choose something, we kind of, in essence, we kind of vote for that choice. So, and you know, we make choices on what you wear, what you want, how you spend your money. And as you make those choices, it's a way of, again, exercising the vote about that. Next. So let's talk about kind of furthering on this idea of choices and voting. In terms of when you know what you like, you know, when you think about making a choice, you decide what you like, what you don't like, and you learn about the topic or learn about the choices that are in front of you. And whether you, as you learn about the choice and you figure out what you want to do with it, you try to decide, do I like it? If you like it, chances are you're going to vote for it or you're going to choose that. If you don't like it, you're going to go a different way or choose something differently. The same idea of voting. Okay, the idea is when you think about voting, you want to make an informed choice or an informed vote. So you learn about when thinking about voting for president candidates, you want to learn about what the presidential candidate, what they stand for, what they're saying they're going to do, and listen and pay attention. Based on what you find out, you decide for yourself. Do I agree with this, with his ideas, disagree with them? And with that information, that helps you decide whether to vote for them or not. Okay, next. Along with that is the idea of, you know, sometimes as you know, as you learn about your choices and about the voting options, that requires work. In essence, it's kind of like homework. You have to spend the time to learn about the candidates, learn about the issue, learn about and think about for yourself, how is this going to impact my life? Do I like what this do for me? Or is the proposition or the idea or what the person is saying, I really don't like what they're saying. I really don't like what they're wanting to do. So, like, for example, if the candidate is saying, I really support people with disabilities, if you elect me and I become into office, I will fight for increased funding to make accessibility more smooth and easy and better. Or is the person saying, I'm going to do everything, I'm going to, you know, all the disability services is kind of a waste of money, so I'm going to cut budgets. Listening and finding out what people are saying, again, will help you decide how you're going to vote. Okay, so again, it's a matter of taking the time to learn about the issue. Next. So let's practice on a little concrete example in terms of voting for candy. So just to clarify, Christine we do have a poll. So you have a choice of, so this is kind of like a pretend vote. We have 3 things on the ballot: chocolate candy bars, Jolly Ranchers, and sugar-free toffee. So if these were options in front of you, take a second to vote on what your favorite candy is. Okay. Okay, and then before we show the results, though, I want to go to the next slide. So, if this was an election where people actually went to polls and filled out ballots, let's say, in terms of early results, some of the early results that when we were examining the ballots, we found out that a lot of people who voted for chocolate candy bars, their votes are not going to be counted because there was a mistake. And the mistake that many people made was they went to the wrong polling place. Polling places, we'll learn more about this on Thursday, kind of are assigned by your home address. So if somebody goes to a polling place that's not their polling place and they vote, their vote doesn't get counted. So in this case, we find out that a lot of people who voted for chocolate candy bars, they went to the wrong polling place, so their votes don't count. Okay. If we go to the next slide, we find out that a lot of people who voted for Jolly Ranchers were so excited, maybe they were so excited about voting for Jolly Ranchers, they just kind of scratched on the form. And they didn't completely fill out the form in the right way. And because the bubble wasn't completely filled out the right way, those votes don't count. So those votes don't get counted in the poll. So a lot of Jolly Rancher votes don't get counted because of the mistake of not filling out the form. A lot of votes are on chocolate candy bars didn't get counted. And so what does that mean? In the last slide is that sugar-free toffee wins because the folks that voted for sugar-free toffee went to the right polling place and they followed the instructions and filled out the bubble or the form in the right way. So all of those votes counted. Okay. Just for fun's sake, what was the grand total? Can we see that?
Nafia, if you're able to show us the totals for the candy, what folks voted for. Was it chocolate? Was it Jolly Ranchers? Or was it the sugar-free taffy?
I apologize, guys. I got distracted with something. I ended up sharing it too early. Sorry, I ended up sharing it too early. Everybody, just so you guys know, it was like 76% chocolate candy bars, and then it was divide between Jolly Ranchers and sugar-free taffy between the rest of those percentages. So you guys actually all picked, the majority was like just under 80% selected chocolate candy bars. Just as that stuff.
Oh, good. Okay.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
No worries, Nafia. No worries. So, you know, in the way that we did it through the online poll, yeah, chocolate candy bars won. But in the example that, you know, if we were following this through like the election process where we actually go to a polling place, get a form, and fill out the form, the reason I illustrated those mistakes is just kind of, again, to help people understand that there can be mistakes made. And if people who vote in the voting process make mistakes, their vote doesn't get counted. So next slide. So just to summarize, you know, the idea of, you know, when you think about going out and making a vote, And in this case, if we go out and make voting for our candy, we get excited, and it feels good to have the power to exercise our advocacy and our right to make a choice and to vote for something. But, think about when if you voted for the chocolate candy bar and you found out that the chocolate candy bars got disqualified, or many of those votes got disqualified because of mistakes that people made, it feels disappointing. It can be frustrating. It can be sad. It's not a positive feeling, because we want the candy bar, our choice, to win, but because of mistakes, it didn't make it. Similarly with the Jolly Ranchers, and we're all excited, we want Jolly Ranchers to win, but again, because some mistakes were made, not all of those votes got counted. And that's all to say, it's like the importance of, yes, it's great to feel empowered and excited to vote and make a choice, but in the cases of elections and voting for policies, it's really important also to follow the instructions and really learn what the process is. And again, on Thursday, when you come back on Thursday's webinar, we'll learn all the ins and outs of that process so that we all are informed on how to register, and how to vote, and so that when we make our vote, we make sure that our vote is actually counted and not disregarded. Okay. So some quick facts about voting. Many people, the numbers are actually said that many people choose not to vote because they may feel like their vote doesn't matter. Sometimes people think, well, what is one vote, my vote? How big of a vote can it be? But in fact, it's very meaningful. Every vote be counted. Some challenges is that statistics show that 6 out of every 10 people with disabilities actually vote. So it is more than half, but it would still be really nice and really important for us, the majority or all of us with disabilities, to go out and vote. And think about it, voting is a way, as we've been talking about, is a way of exercising our speak up and speak out and advocacy skills. Voting is a very real way for those with disabilities to tell our government and our policymakers, this is what I want you to do for me. These are the services that I want you to do and make and fund. And these are the resources that I need. And if people don't vote, then they're basically saying, well, we're gonna let whoever make the plans, and then I have to live with it. But those of us, all of us who are here, who are wanting to advocate, we want to make sure that we encourage others we know with disabilities to go out and exercise their right to make a choice and to vote. And that simple act of voting, strong message to policymakers, this is what I want. Next. Okay. And again, just in terms of the importance of reasons to vote, as I mentioned, we use this voting to shape our policies and procedures. And that even though the can exercise is kind of a fun exercise, when we think about voting around policies and services, those are really important issues of our lives. So think about that as a way of helping to encourage ourselves, encourage others to go out and vote. So next. So I'm going to turn over to Tara, who will spend some time going over the ins and outs of the rights and responsibilities of voting. Take it away, Tara.
All right. Thank you, Jay-Jin. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to just, I know we are, we're at 1 o'clock, so we're going to go till, hopefully, we're set to end at around 1:30, but hopefully we can get done a little early. So first we're going to talk about voting rights. And this particular slide is about the Help America Vote Act, also known as HAVA. So HAVA is a federal law that makes voting accessible, which is so important, right? And it says that states must make sure that everyone can vote privately and independently. So an example of this would be when you go to the polling place and there's kind of like little booths, or, you know, the little table has some kind of like things on it so that you have privacy, and that's really important. Also, the law states that every state must set up a statewide system to give people provisional ballots if there's a question about whether they can vote or not. And so a provisional ballot is basically used to record a vote when there's questions about a voter's eligibility. So some of the times that you might need a provisional ballot is, say your name doesn't appear on the electoral roll for that precinct or polling place, so maybe you went to the wrong place, or maybe your eligibility hasn't been changed, or you don't have an updated photo ID. Some other examples would be if you needed an absentee ballot that you requested via, you know, the mail, and it doesn't get to you in time. So these are just a couple of situations where you may need to do a provisional ballot. Okay. Oh, it is very loud in my house. I am so sorry. Okay, so you can bring someone you trust to help you vote. Poll workers can't deny you a support person. And so I just want to make sure that we all remember this. If you need someone to help you vote at the polling booth, that is okay. And there is not an option, people cannot deny you your right, okay? So some people who you may not want to help you vote and who legally cannot help you are your boss, a union officer from your job, or a candidate who's on the ballot. So a union officer, kind of an example of this would be, say you work at a grocery store like Jewel Osco. So, you know, most of those organizations have unions that help, you know, organize employees and fight for wage increases. So a union officer would not be someone who you could bring, okay? Next slide, please. You can ask for help from election officials from 2 different parties. Poll workers can help you with the voting process, but they cannot tell you who to vote for or explain the issues in simpler terms. So Jin touched on this a couple of minutes ago to say that really before you get to the poll, it's really important that we all do our research to think about the issues and decide who we want to vote for or what issues we want to vote on. And I will say that there, come voting time, usually there is there's some websites that you can go to that will explain the issues in simple terms, or you can kind of like fill out a survey to see kind of where you fall. So as the elections near, the Alliance will definitely be sharing some of those resources to make things a little bit easier. Because I know I've gone to the voting poll before, and there's some smaller positions like judges and you know, smaller county-wide positions that I sometimes am not sure. And I've been in this situation a couple times where I've gone to the poll and thought, oh man, I should have really done more research. So that's definitely something I would encourage you to do. You can get a copy of the ballot and then start your research from there. Okay, next slide. So if you make a mistake on your ballot, you can get another one. Everybody makes mistakes, right? It's your right to be given a new ballot if you make a mistake on your first one. And you can get up to 2 replacement ballots. And I definitely want to, just remind everyone that not every election is the same, right? So sometimes you may go and it's and you fill out bubbles, you fill in the bubbles, or maybe you make a line, or maybe it's digital. So there's lots of different ways that, ballots can be created. And so, sometimes as much as we want to practice for the day of, it's not always the same. So keep that in mind, okay? Next slide. You can ask for a provisional ballot if you're told that you can't vote. And so remember a couple minutes ago, I talked about provisional ballots. So if you go to vote and they say, oh, you're not allowed to vote for this reason or that reason, you can ask for a provisional ballot. And it's best to ask the poll worker to show proof of why you can't vote before asking for a provisional ballot. That's important too. And I think that's definitely something that a support person can help with as well. You know, we get so excited to go use our voice and exercise our right to vote. And then if someone says, oh, sorry, you don't have the right ID, well, let's make sure we ask questions and follow up and get the reason. Okay, next slide. You don't need to have a disability to use accessible voting machines. This is a good one to remember. So here in this photo, we see someone using what looks like is an accessible voting machine. So the HAVA Act, the Help Americans Vote Act, says that every polling place must have an accessible voting booth to help people vote privately and independently. Next slide. Okay, make sure that you're registered to vote. So that was one of the things that, you know, if you need it, sometimes if you go to vote and they say you're not registered, that will be a good example of using a provisional ballot, but definitely making sure that you're registered to vote is a good thing to do. And I know that you can definitely do that online. Sometimes you can do it at like the DMV or other places that will allow you to do that. So we talked about this again, know the issues and candidates, and ask questions if you need some help. Next slide. Be a role model as an informed voter. Get out and vote. I love this one. Yeah, so a lot of, every time we have an election, we see the data of voter turnout, and it's always, you know, it's usually not as high as what we'd hope, right? And so, you know, I think as much as we may feel powerless, especially in times like these, voting is really one of the most important things that we can do to speak up and speak out about the things that are important to us. And being a role model for others and encouraging others in our lives to vote is something that we can do that may have a really big impact. So encouraging your family and friends. And I think also if you're educating yourself about disability issues, for example, maybe that's something you can share with your friends and family in your life, or your staff, or you know, any person that you know about, hey, I'm really passionate about this issue. Say it's healthcare or services for people with disabilities, and knowing, you know, what your position is, maybe you can share that with others and encourage them to use their power and voice to vote. So you can also help someone else learn. Oh, can you go back, please? Okay, so help someone else learn how to vote and then celebrate your choice and your voice. Okay, next, thank you. Get involved in other ways with voting and elections. So if you want to volunteer, you can contact your local election board to find out where you can register to vote and vote on the election day. Next slide. Ask a poll worker for voting information in Braille, large print, or in other accessible formats. This is great. So yeah, at the polling place, they should have voting information in Braille and large print, which is really great because sometimes we need those. And the League of Women Voters is available to support you in getting information on candidates and issues. In some states, they make an easy to read voter guide. And I will also encourage you to really check back in with the Alliance and the ARC and Equip for Equality around election time, because I know that all of us will be sharing resources on, you know, easy to read voter guides. And also I think Equip for Equality will likely touch on this, but if they don't, they're a really big asset in the state of Illinois for making sure polling places are accessible. It's really sad and shocking to learn how many polling places are not accessible for people with disabilities in the community, and just keeping in mind that, you know, disability affects most people, right? We all know someone with a disability. 1 in 4 people has one, and it's a minority group. We can join at any time. So people that are elderly, mothers with small children and strollers, everybody in our society can really benefit from accessibility. And so to know that a lot of polling places in communities aren't accessible is really frustrating. So that's definitely something we can do to connect with, you know, voting boards and really make sure that it's accessible for everyone. Next slide. Okay, so here is another poll. Speak up and speak out. This is a really exciting one. I'm really happy that I get to do this poll. Do you think that Election Day should be a holiday that everyone gets off? Yes or no? So usually in November when we vote for, you know, our presidential election and all the other elections, should we have that off as a holiday to make sure that everyone can use their power to vote? Yes or no?
Okay, Christine, could you just make sure that the polling is on the correct thing, because I'm having trouble finding it. There should be like a little option at the top for like polls.
Okay, I do not see the option for.
So there should be at the top, like where the presentation is.
Yes.
There should be, sorry, there should be a, sorry, this is easier if I had access.
Yes, I am not seeing anything that talks about polling.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. That's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Okay, do you think Election Day should be a holiday that everyone gets off of work? Yes or no? And the results are, oh, okay, 67% said yes, and 33% said no. Well, that's very interesting. Okay, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to turn it back over to Jay Jin.
Wow, actually a little surprising. I thought there'd be more people who were wanting to have a day off, but it's all good. So as we wind down, we wanted to share this poem by Jeff Ridgway entitled "My Vote." They say I can't vote. They say the decision is not mine. They say I don't understand. I guess they think they are being kind. I wonder what they would say or think. They only knew that when they call the president our president, I want to call him mine too. If I never get the chance to vote, pulling the lever, punching the card, or writing his name down, I stay the same, dumb, misinformed, unchanged, unempowered. That is what this world expects me to be, but I want so much more. I want to be the most educated, the most informed, the most totally changed, the most totally empowered person that I can be when I vote. I can make a difference. And then I can say with pride, not yours, not theirs, but my president, because I put him there. And that's the power of the vote. You know, we speak up and we speak out, and we use the power of the vote to let our policymakers know what we want. And this is the last poll that we have for you. Is like, have you ever passed out candidate information? So thinking about the elections that you've been involved with, have you volunteered for a candidate and helped them distribute their information? Oh, great. It's like 27% said yes, and 73 said no. So we do have some folks who were active. So this is, again, as you know, as Tara said, there are opportunities to get involved in the election process. So this kind of gives you an idea. Is like if there's a candidate, whether it's a local election or state or national, that you feel connected to and you want to help, you can volunteer. And one thing that you can do is help distribute their information, help others learn about this candidate and what they stand for. Okay. So as we close out, just want to say thank you all for if you all have questions. This is information about the Alliance, our email and website, and our Facebook info. Next. And then just as a reminder, so again, thanks for being with us today as we learned about voting rights and responsibilities and the impact of voting. And then to come back tomorrow, Wednesday, the 17th, same time at noon, from 12 to 1 or 1:30, where you will hear from the great folks at the Arc of Illinois on the topic of ways to learn about candidates and issues in civic engagement. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And like Jay Jin said, we're going to return here tomorrow at 12 p.m. for another session in regards to the census, as well as ways to learn about candidates and the issues. I would like to thank Jay Jin, Christine Beck, Tara Ahern for their presentation. I would like to thank Rhonda Estelle for her ASL interpretation. And I would like to thank Letty Bardick for her Spanish interpretation, as well as Leanne Hibbler for her captioning. Greatly appreciate all of you guys that were a part of making this whole entire session happen, as well as this entire week happen. And of course, to our attendees who are joining us. Thank you so much for everything. We will look forward to talking to you tomorrow.